How does a Dark Lord everybody swears is dead and buried talk a whole room of immortal geniuses into forging the exact rings that hand him the world? Yeah, that's the show. This is Amazon's The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, the wildly expensive prequel set in the Second Age of Middle-earth, thousands of years before a certain hobbit trips over a certain ring in a cave. This is where it all starts, where Mordor comes from, where the rings get made, where the guy who becomes Gandalf falls out of the sky in a flaming rock. It also runs about 6 storylines at once, which is where a lot of people lost the plot. We walked the whole thing, both seasons, 16 episodes, front to back. So season 3 actually makes sense when it lands. Grab a drink, and let's go. We open way back in Valinor, Elf Paradise. We meet Galadriel as a kid getting picked on by other elf children who wrecked the toy boat she built because apparently bullying is older than the sun. And the one who pulls her out of it is her big brother Finrod. He teaches her a lesson she carries for life, about how a ship stays up when the stone sinks, about keeping your eyes on the light instead of the dark. Then he warns her he won't always be around to say it. Hold on to that, because the peace breaks. The first Dark Lord, Morgoth, tears the light out of the world, and the elves march to war in Middle-earth. Centuries of it. Morgoth finally falls, but he leaves behind a lieutenant just as cruel and far more patient. His name is Sauron. Finrod swears to hunt him down. Sauron gets to him first. Galadriel finds her brother's body marked with a strange symbol no one can read. And standing over him, she makes his vow her own. Centuries later, she's hauling an exhausted company across the frozen top of the world, hunting Sauron's last stronghold. Everyone else has moved on. To them, the war's over and the boogeyman is a bedtime story. Not her. They find the abandoned fortress and the same mark carved into the stone, the one that was cut into her brother. He was here. That's all she needs. A snow troll comes roaring out of the dark and tears into the company before she puts it down, almost single-handedly. Her soldiers are spent and want to turn back. She makes it clear she'll press on alone before she quits. Cut to Lindon, the shining elf capital where the High King Gil-galad is throwing a victory ceremony. The message? The long war is over. Peace starts today. And these heroes have earned the ultimate prize. A one-way boat trip across the sea to the Undying Lands. Back to Elf Heaven. Lovely sentiment. Slightly awkward given the fresh mark we just watched Galadriel pull out of the ice. But sure, throw the party. Here's Elrond. Yes, you got that. That Elrond. Here, he's Gil-galad's earnest right-hand elf. I'm calling him the Boy Scout because he's honorable, plays by the rules, and believes in the system. He's gone a little political too, which Galadriel needles him about the second they reunite. She wants a fresh company to finish the hunt. Elrond warns her the only reason she got a medal instead of a scolding is that she blew past the king's orders and he chose to let it slide. Push it again, and that goodwill runs dry. But she can't let go. Getting on that boat means carrying every horror she's ever seen into paradise. Forever. And she'd rather stay in the fight. Gil-galad tells her to lay the sword down and finally be at peace. She fires back with the question that is her entire character. Without the sword, without the hunt, what is she even? Elrond tells her she's his friend. She's not really listening. Meanwhile, way south in a rough human village, a different problem is cooking. There's an elf soldier named Arondir posted here, quietly in love with a local human healer named Bronwyn, which is a big no-no. Elf and human has been tried twice ever, and the elves are packing up, since that same war's over order shuts down every far outpost. Naturally, that's the exact moment Bronwyn's cow wanders east, comes back sick, and coughs up black gunk. Arondir goes to check the village it grazed near, a place called Hordern. Back home, Bronwyn's super angsty son, that's like his entire character, Theo the kid, finds a broken sword hilt hidden away, clearly not a farm tool, marked with something ugly. He decides to keep it. Kid, put it back. He does not. Out in the wild, we meet the Harfoots, the tiny barefoot ancestors of hobbits. Our girl is Nori, way too curious for her own good, forever wandering off trail even though the Harfoot way of life is keep your head down, stay with the herd, never stand out. Nori wants to know what's over the horizon. The elders spot strangers up on the ridge and call it a bad omen. And then the sky does something very strange. Because up on that ship to Elf Heaven that Gil-galad forced Galadriel on, Galadriel makes her call. As the light of the Undying Lands opens up right in front of her, she turns around and dives off the boat back into the freezing sea to keep hunting. She abandons paradise itself to chase her nemesis. From here on, I'm calling her Ahab, because she is one harpoon short of a white whale. And at that exact second, a flaming rock screams down and slams into the earth right by the Harfoots. Told you the sky was strange. Nori goes to the crater, and there's a person in it. A big, silent, banged-up man wreathed in fire, alive, and very much not normal. His magical power misfiring in ways he seemingly cannot control. I'm calling him Meteor Man, because he arrived in a meteor, and nobody has a clue who or what he is. Could be a gift, could be a walking disaster. Nori hides him from the rest of the Harfoots anyway, because if word gets out she took in a sky giant, they'll blame her for every bit of bad luck that rolls through the camp. He can barely talk, just broken fragments, and at one point he uses a jar of fireflies to trace a pattern of stars in the sky, like he's hunting one specific constellation. Nori knows he's searching for something up there. She has no idea what she's signed up for. Neither does he. Back at sea, Ahab is not thriving. She gets pulled onto a raft of debris with a handful of human survivors. One of them, a cagey guy clearly running from something. This is Halbrand. Keep an eye on him. Keep a big fiery eye on him. The uneasy truce gets cut short when a massive sea worm surfaces and wrecks the raft, and Galadriel and Halbrand end up clinging to each other in open water. They trade names, and they trade suspicion. She pegs him as a deserter. He tells her his home is ash now, burned out by orcs, and that she should quit dressing up her revenge trip as a noble crusade. She doesn't care what he calls it. She just needs him to point her at where the orcs were, and that's the Southlands. Over in the elf realm of Eregion, the Boy Scout special assignment kicks in. Elrond is sent to work with Celebrimbor, the greatest smith the elves ever produced. I'm calling him the Ringsmith, because if you know where this is headed, you know exactly what this man is about to spend 2 seasons making. Right now, he just has a dream. Build a forge more powerful than anything ever built, and craft something of real world-shaping power. Done by spring, which needs a workforce the elves can't cough up. Elrond has a fix. He happens to be best friends with a dwarf prince. Elrond heads into the underground dwarf kingdom of Khazad-dûm to see his old pal, Prince Durin. And Durin, the salty prince, won't even let him through the gate. Elrond vanished for 20 years without a word, missed the wedding, missed both kids being born, and now shows up with a favor to ask? Durin is furious, and honestly, fair enough. So Elrond invokes an ancient dwarven endurance rite. The 2 of them smash boulders until one can't lift the hammer. Elf banished from every dwarven land forever if he loses. What actually saves the friendship, though, isn't the contest. It's Durin's wife, Disa, the voice of reason, who takes one look at these 2, overrules her sulking husband, and drags Elrond in for dinner. Over the meal, the frost melts. The apologies land, and there's this lovely beat where Durin has raised a sapling from the great elf tree in the pitch dark of the mountain, because a home with that much love in it was never going to stay dark. This friendship is probably the best thing in the whole show. The one storm cloud in this whole deal is Durin's father, the old King Durin III, who does not trust elves an inch and warns his son that an elf and dwarf are hammer and stone, and sooner or later one cracks the other. And back in the Southlands, the other shoe drops. There's been something digging under the villages, and whatever it was finally shows its face. An orc breaks into Bronwyn's home in the dead of night. An orc breaks into Bronwyn's home and she barely fights it off. Whatever peace the elves declared up north, it did not reach down here. So Bronwyn rallies anyone who'll listen. At first light, they run for the old abandoned elf watchtower and make their stand. So the elves are toasting a war that clearly isn't over. Sauron's mark is still warm in the snow. A fire-powered stranger is loose in the woods. And next, Ahab and Halbrand wash up on the golden island of Númenor. And the whole board gets a lot bigger. The ship that fished Ahab and Halbrand out of the sea turns out to be Númenorian, and hauls them to Númenor itself, the Golden Island Kingdom of Men. Quick history, because it matters. Way back when the Southlanders' ancestors sided with the first Dark Lord, these men sided with the Elves. And for that, the Valar, sort of like archangels, gifted them this island. So Númenor and the Elves used to be close. Used to be being the operative term. Somewhere along the line, Númenor slammed the door, turned away elf ships, and cut off contact entirely. Nobody here is thrilled to see a pointy-eared warrior stroll off the boat. Running the place is Queen Regent Mithril, holding the throne for her ailing father. I'm calling her the reluctant queen because she is sitting on a powder keg and she knows it. Ahab, being Ahab, immediately makes it worse. She refuses to kneel, name-drops her entire resume, and demands a ship to Middle-earth like the island owes her one. The whole court's attitude is that elves are the reason they carry all this history in the first place. So this goes over like a lead balloon. Mithril splits the difference, 3 days to consider the request, with Ahab confined to the palace as an honored guest. Read babysat. The captain who rescued them is Elendil, a dutiful sea guardsman from a noble line. I'm calling him the Dad, because he spends this whole stretch trying to keep his restless kids on rails. Chief among them is his son. And yes, this is that Isildur. The guy who, in the book timeline, a few thousand years from now, fumbles the single most important decision in the history of the ring. Though, I guess in the show's timeline, that'll just happen sooner, I suppose. Right now, he's just a cadet, with his head in the clouds, dragging his feet on his big sea trial while his father insists he's getting on that boat whether he likes it or not. Meanwhile, the island's real power broker makes his move. Chancellor Pharazôn is the guy who knows every name in the city and can turn any crowd on a dime. He watches the anti-elf mood curdling in the streets and pours gasoline on it, whipping the crowd into an anti-elf frenzy aimed square at the queen, and then swoops in with a rousing speech about how Númenor will always belong to men. Slick. Yeah, he's gonna be important. Ahab obviously does not sit quietly for 3 days. She tries to steal a boat, gets stopped, and instead cons the dad into taking her to the Hall of Lore, where she digs into that mysterious mark. And here's the payoff. It isn't a family crest at all. It's a map of the Southlands, laying out a plan. After the first Dark Lord fell, his successor means to carve the Southlands into a homeland for evil, a place built for darkness to thrive. Ahab realizes the Southlands aren't just in danger, they're ground zero, and if the enemy she's been hunting really is back, this is only the beginning. Halbrand, for his part, handles the island by getting jumped in a tavern and thrown in a cell, which is where Ahab tracks him down with a wild pitch. Halbrand carries with him a sigil that once united all the scattered Southland tribes under one king, and she's decided that Halbrand is that king, the lost heir. Halbrand wants nothing to do with it. His people didn't just lose the old war, his ancestors swore a blood oath to the Dark Lord, so as far as he's concerned, his bloodline is cursed, not royal. Ahab does not care. Come to Middle-earth, she says, and they'll redeem both their broken families together. He points out she's marooned on an island and still has no army. She tells him that's about to change. It changes when Ahab pushes too far. She corners Mithril with the full pitch. Back Halbrand, reforge the old alliance, sail to the Southlands, fight the enemy. Mithril says no. Númenor has picked a different road, so Ahab demands to go over her head to the one person who can actually say yes, the king. That's the line that gets her thrown in a cell for sedition, and it tells Halbrand everything. The queen didn't flinch when Ahab insulted her people or defied her orders. She only panicked when someone asked about her father. Miriel's father is shut away in a tower, hidden from the kingdom, and Ahab escapes to go find him. What she finds is the truth. The old king was loyal to the Elves and tried to bring the two people back together. The island revolted, and Mithril was installed to calm the storm. On his first night out of power, he showed her what he'd been guarding: a seeing stone, a palantir, and a vision of Númenor's future. Because apparently palantirs show visions of the future. A monstrous wave swallowed the entire island whole, and in that vision, the disaster begins with the arrival of an elf. So now the reluctant queen's fear makes sense. She thinks Ahab is the spark that burns it all down. Ahab argues the opposite. Only Númenor can doom Númenor. And turning away from this war might be the very choice that sinks them. She begs Mithril to choose faith over fear. Mithril, gutted, tells her faith is too flimsy a thing to build a kingdom on. And that seems to be that. Except a sign lands. The petals of the sacred white tree fall, which the faithful reads as the tears of the Valar, and that, along with her dying father, tips her over. Mithril reverses. She announces that she will personally lead a Númenorian force across the sea to fight for the Southlands. And one after another, the volunteers step forward. Númenor is going to war. Over in those doomed Southlands, things are already grim. Remember Arondir, the elf soldier? He's been dragged underground and chained to a work gang, all of them digging tunnels for a mysterious master the orcs revere like a god. They call him Adar, which is the Elvish word for father, so I'm gonna call him Orc-Dad. Here's the unsettling part. He speaks Elvish, and even the elves start wondering whether Adar is just another name for the enemy they already fear. The show is very much dangling that. Adar doesn't kill Arondir. He sends him back to the human refugees with an ultimatum. Abandon your land and swear yourself to him, or he comes for the tower. Those refugees, led by the healer Bronwyn, have holed up in an old elf watchtower, low on food and lower on hope. And the kid, Theo, is still carrying that broken sword hilt, which turns out to be a very hot item. The orcs are tearing the countryside apart, hunting for it, and Theo barely slips their grasp. Then the local crank, Waldreg, corners him and drops the mask. The hilt is no ordinary weapon. It's a thing of darkness forged for the enemy's servants. and Waldreg has been a devoted Sauron worshipper this whole time. He points to that falling star from a few weeks back as proof his master is returning, and he wants the boy and the hilt ready for it. Now for the one thread that's actually pleasant to be around. Back in Khazad-dûm, the Boy Scout notices his best friend is dodging him. Durin, the salty prince, keeps making excuses, and Disa, the voice of reason, runs interference with a very convincing story about stew and a mining trip. Elrond isn't buying it, follows Durin down a hidden shaft, and catches him red-handed, mining a strange new ore. Durin makes him swear a solemn oath never to breathe a word, then shows him the secret, a metal that weighs next to nothing, outmatches steel, and gives off a faint glow from somewhere inside. Durin calls it grey glitter. Elrond gives it the name it'll carry forever, Mithril. The catch is, it's dangerous to mine, which is why Durin's father shut it down, and sure enough, a shaft caves in with 4 dwarves trapped inside. Disa saves them the only way a stone singer can, singing to the mountain until it gives the miners back, all 4 alive. The old king seals the whole vein anyway, but the near disaster clears the air. Elrond and Durin patch things up. Durin and his father finally reconcile, and Elrond invites his friend up to Lindon, which Durin's father quietly encourages because his gut says the elves are up to something. He's not wrong. And in the smallest corner of the map, the Harfoots are on the move. Nori is in hot water for lying, stealing, and smuggling a giant into the caravan, and the elders come within an inch of casting her family out entirely. Instead, they get parked at the very back of the migration, which is basically a death sentence for slow walkers. But Meteor Man pitches in, throwing his considerable muscle, when compared to them, behind their cart to keep them with the pack. He helps them, they help him. For now, it's working. So the reluctant queen's fleet is finally at sea, Ahab has her army, and Orkdad has thrown down his ultimatum. Next, Númenor makes landfall in Middle-earth. The Southlanders make their stand against the Orcs, and Orkdad reveals what all this tunnel digging was actually for. We pick up with 3 fuses burning at once. Númenor is finally sailing to war, the Elves are quietly dying, and the Southlands are about to become the most important patch of dirt in Middle-earth, one at a time. Start with the Elves, because this is a reveal that reframes everything. Back in the Elf realms, the High King pulls the Boy Scout aside and drops a bomb. The Elves are dying. Their inner light, the thing that makes them immortal, is fading, and the sickly great tree is just the outward sign of it. If they can't fix it, every last elf has to be gone from Middle-earth by spring, or slowly fade out of the world entirely. No coming back. And the cure turns out to be Mithril. That grey glitter Durin's been mining isn't just a pretty awesome metal. Legend says a Cimmeril's light is sealed inside it, put there an age ago when an elf and a Balrog fought over a tree that held it. Yeah, a Balrog. The point is, that light is exactly what the fading elves need, and they need a mountain of it, fast. Which puts the Boy Scout in a brutal spot. The only way to save his entire race is to spill Durin's secret, the one he swore not to give up. The High King all but orders him to break it. Elrond won't. To him, an oath is the sort of thing your soul is built on, and he refuses to betray his best friend behind his back. So instead, he does the honorable thing and goes straight to Durin and lays it out. No games. Here's the situation. Here's why I lied when we first met. My whole people die without your help. And Durin, being the friend he is, doesn't get angry. He tells Elrond the survival of every elf alive apparently comes down to him, then just shrugs and says fine. Let's go convince his father. This friendship keeps being the best thing in this show. Over in Númenor, the reluctant queen's war fleet is coming together, and not everyone's thrilled about it. The politician Pharazôn has quietly done the math and likes what he sees. Save the Southlanders, install a king who owes Númenor everything, and suddenly the island is collecting ore, timber, and tribute from grateful subjects for generations. He's not fighting for the Southlands. He's building an empire. His son isn't sure about any of it, and when someone tries to torch the ships to kill the whole expedition, the saboteur very nearly pulls it off. In the chaos, Isildur, who's been desperate to get aboard ever since washing out of the Sea Guard, drags a man out of the flames and, one way or another, ends up on the ship. The fire rattles the queen, but she holds her nerve. While all this is coming together, Ahab is right at home, drilling the green Númenorian soldiers in a training yard on how to actually kill an orc. There's a quieter thing simmering between her and her king-to-be, too. Halbrand keeps trying to duck the crown, and when she pushes, he warns her she has no idea what he did to survive before she pulled him out of the sea. That if his own people ever knew, they'd cast him out. She doesn't flinch. She tells him what actually drives her brother killed by servants of Sauron, and a hunt she cannot stop. Even after her own soldiers rebelled against her and her closest friend arranged her exile, All because the people around her could no longer tell her apart from the evil she was chasing. Hold on to that last part. Then the fleet finally sails northeast for Middle-earth, Halbrand aboard as Southland's king-in-waiting, Ahab out front, riding toward the war she's been fighting for centuries. Meanwhile, in the tiniest corner of the map, the Harfoot migration grinds on. Meteor Man is slowly picking up words and, more importantly, starting to believe he might be one of the good ones. When he worries he's dangerous, Nori tells him he's no peril at all. He's here because he wants to help, and he clings to that like a life raft. Poppy sings the caravan a wistful little walking song about the road ahead, which is lovely and, given everything, a bit on the nose. But the woods around them keep going wrong, unnaturally bare, wolves in every shadow, and something is out there tracking the big fella. Whatever it is, it's getting closer. Now the main event. In the Southlands, Orc Dad finishes the tunnel his slaves have spent all the time digging, and marches his army on the old watchtower where the refugees are hiding. Arondir gives them a choice. Bow to the enemy and let this tower stand as proof of how weak you are, or fight and make it stand for the opposite. Some stand, some don't. The crank, Waldreg, leads a group of defectors straight to Orcdad and pledges himself to Sauron, flat out asking if that's who Orcdad even is. Notably, Orcdad does not say yes, and he's kinda mad about the whole thing. He just makes Waldreg prove his loyalty in blood. Then, Arondir clocks something crucial. That broken sword hilt Theo's been lugging around isn't just a weapon. It's a key, made by the enemy long ago, and they need it badly for whatever comes next. When the orcs storm the tower, Arondir springs his trap and brings the whole structure down on their heads, buying a few hours before falling back to defend the village. Before it kicks off, Arondir and Bronwyn share a small, aching moment, planting a single seed together in the old elf tradition. New life against the odds, and promising to plant the rest after the battle. The two of them and Theo, as a family, it's a tender little beat, and given what's coming for this valley, a quietly brutal one. The village fight is where it gets ugly. In the brawl, Bronwyn takes a grievous wound, and Theo has to cauterize it with fire to keep his mother from bleeding out. She barely hangs on. The orcs pour in, Orc Dad closing on the hilt, and it looks completely lost. And then the horns sound. Ahab arrives at the head of the Númenorian cavalry, charging into the orc ranks and flipping the whole slaughter around in minutes. The men of Númenor cut the orc army to pieces. The day is saved, and Galadriel runs down Orcdad himself and takes him prisoner. Halbrand nearly executes him on the spot. Some old grudge simmering there that never quite gets explained, but Galadriel needs him alive, because she finally gets her answers, and they are not what she expected. Interrogating him, she works out what Orcdad actually is. Not Sauron, but one of the Moriandor, an elf captured and twisted by the first Dark Lord long ago. One of the very first orcs ever made. He also fills in a piece she's been chasing for centuries. After the Old War, Sauron didn't just vanish. He set himself up as a healer of the world, trying to force Middle-earth's broken land into one flawless whole, reaching for a power that could command living things rather than be made of them, and drawing as many followers north as he could. But whatever he was truly after slipped his grasp, no matter how many he bled dry chasing it. And here's the gut punch. He tells her that after the Old War, Sauron kept sacrificing orcs, Adar's own children, in his hunt for some hidden power. So Adar killed him. He did it himself, to save his people. And all he wanted now is a homeland where his kind can finally live free. Not as slaves, but as beings with names and hearts worthy of a place in the world. Galadriel refuses to believe he could have killed Sauron, and she answers his plea with pure venom, vowing to wipe every last one of his children off the earth. Orcdad just looks at her and says the quiet part out loud. She's become as twisted by darkness as he is, and maybe the successor to the Dark Lord she spent her whole life hunting is staring back at her in the mirror. It lands hard enough that she nearly murders a defenseless prisoner, and Halbrand has to pull her back from the edge. In the aftermath, the Queen presents Halbrand to the survivors as the king they were promised, and the Southlanders hail him as their true king, a crown, an army, a people, everything Galadriel built for him. And then, right when it all feels won, the ground starts to shake, because Orcdad losing the battle was never the point. Getting that key was. It opens a hidden dam high above the valley, and a wall of water comes roaring down, funneling through every last tunnel the orcs spent all this time digging, straight into the belly of the mountain. And the mountain answers. The volcano erupts, fire and ash blast into the sky and rain down over the entire valley, swallowing the village. The survivors, the Queen's soldiers, all of it, under a rolling cloud of black. When the smoke finally settles, the green Southlands are gone. In their place is a scorched, dead, lifeless waste. the land the Southlanders spent an entire age earning back, wiped off the map in a single night. Everyone who stood in that valley buried in ash or scattered into the dark. This is it. This is where Mordor comes from. So the valley is buried. Númenor's triumph just turned literally to ash, and half the cast is somewhere under that black cloud. Next, we find out who crawls back out of it. A cult from the east finally corners Meteor Man, and two mysteries this show has been sitting on all season: who Halbrand really is, and what actually fell out of that sky. Both come due at once. When the ash finally clears, that hard-won victory is rubble. The eruption caught everyone. Isildur is nowhere to be found, presumed dead, which absolutely guts his father, who searches the wreckage and comes up empty, while Beric, Isildur's horse, wanders back alone. The reluctant queen survives, but the blast took her sight. She's blind now, led by the hand, still barely able to process it. The Númenorians have no choice but to retreat, loading the survivors and sailing home. And before she leaves, Mithril makes a vow. Númenor will be back. Over on the black side of the valley, Orkdad and his children finally have what they marched for: a sunless homeland where they can walk in the open without burning. A place that used to be the Southlands and now answers to nobody but them. Galadriel drags herself out of the ash beside the kid, Theo, and in the quiet we learn she's carrying more loss than we knew. Not just the murdered brother, who kicked off her whole crusade, but a husband, Celebrimbor, who marched off to war centuries ago and never came home. Under the mountain, the Boy Scout makes his pitch. The elves are dying, Mithril is the only cure. So Elrond kneels before old Durin III and begs for access to the mines, offering centuries of elf grain and timber in trade. The old king says no. Flat no. He won't spend his people's lives to buy the elves a way out of dying, and as far as he's concerned, the elves' time is simply up. Durin, the salty prince, is having none of it. He and Disa quietly reopened the sealed mine themselves and hit a huge vein of the stuff, but the old king catches them and it detonates into the ugliest father-son fight in the show, ending with the king stripping his own son of his title on the spot. It's a brutal one. The old man dredging up how he once cradled a sickly newborn Durin through the nights and swore the boy would grow into something mighty, and Durin firing back that his father smothers every scrap of the ambition he claims to want for him. And in sealing that mine back up, nobody notices what all their digging has begun to wake far, far below. Remember the Balrog from that old legend? It's down there. That's a problem for another age. Way out east, the thing that's been stalking Meteor Man finally catches him. It's a trio of white-robed cultists, and they are dead certain they found their master. They kneel, they call him Lord Sauron, and they promise to carry him off to a far eastern land called Rhûn, which happens to be exactly where those stars he's been chasing all season actually live. So the question the whole show has been circling, is this guy the Dark Lord, finally gets its answer. And it's a swerve. Nori and a rescue party of Harfoots come charging in to save him, and the scuffle of the cultists mortally wound the old trail leader Sadok. As Sadok lies dying, Nori gets through to Meteor Man with the same thing she told him from the start. He doesn't have to be what they say he is. He's good, because he chooses to help. It snaps him loose. He turns his power on them and burns them to cinder. And with their last breath, they realize their whole quest was a mistake. He is not Sauron. He's a different kind of being altogether. An Ishtar, a wizard, one of the good ones. Sadok dies peacefully watching the sunrise, and Meteor Man, now knowing he's some kind of wizard and not much else, sets off for Rhûn to learn who he really is, with Nori choosing to leave the only home she's ever known to walk beside him. So Meteor Man is off the hook, which leaves one very loud question. If he isn't Sauron, then where is Sauron? A lot closer than anyone wanted. Rewind to the aftermath. Halbrand, the freshly crowned Southland king, was badly wounded in the battle, so Galadriel brings him to Eregion for elvish healing. He recovers, and the two of them grow close enough that Ahab, who trusts almost nobody, finds herself actually trusting this man. Meanwhile, Celebrimbor, the ringsmith, is out of time. The High King is arriving any moment expecting a way to save the elves, and the Mithril on its own just isn't enough. And that's when Halbrand, casually poking around the workshop, hands Celebrimbor the answer. Don't use the Mithril pure, alloy it. Blend it with other metals to amplify what it can do. Because apparently, elves didn't know about alloys. He calls the idea a gift. Celebrimbor runs with it. The breakthrough that saves an entire immortal race comes straight from a random castaway nobody ever bothered to check. When the High King does show up, Celebrimbor and Halbrand pitch him a single object to save every elf alive, a crown. Its closed circular shape chosen to concentrate the power towards something almost without limit, made to sit on the High King's own head. Gil-galad does not like the smell of it, and he likes it a good deal less once he notices that a phrase Celebrimbor lets slip, one about a power that rules living things instead of being made by them. Sounds exactly like something a Dark Lord would say. He orders Eregion shut down and everyone marched back to Lindon, and only Elrond is able to talk him into a stay of a few weeks, keeps the forge burning at all. Then Galadriel goes digging into the Southlands royal bloodline to shore up her king's claim, and the floor gives out. There is no king of the Southlands. That line died out more than 1,000 years ago. No heir, nothing. The crest Halbrand carries, the whole identity, is a fake. She confronts him and the mask comes off. The haunted, charming survivor she pulled out of the ocean, made her closest ally, and helped put a crown on? That's Sauron, baby! The Dark Lord she has hunted her entire life has been sitting right beside her since the day she fished him out of the sea. He doesn't even drop the disguise cleanly. He crawls into her head and wears her dead brother's face, the brother whose murder set this whole crusade in motion, and throws her own words back at her, the ones about how you sometimes have to reach into the dark to find the light, and the ones about the two of them being brought together for a reason. It's a vicious bit of mind games. And then he makes his real play. He doesn't fight her, he tempts her. He spins his version of things, that after the last war all he ever wanted was to heal the world he helped break, which just so happens to be exactly what the elves are killing themselves to do right now. He lays it all out. Rule beside him. She'll bind him to the light. He'll bind her to power. Together they save Middle-earth, and he'll make her a queen. Galadriel sees straight through it, that in his mouth, saving the world and ruling it are the same sentence, and turns him down cold. He tries one last threat, that the elves fade without him, and that they'll never forgive her once they learn Sauron is alive because she saved him. Elrond finds her half drowned in a river, and by then Sauron is gone, slipped away. Galadriel warns the others off Halbrand for good, but she buries the worst of it. As far as Celebrimbor knows, a helpful smith just skipped town, and that's definitely not going to bite anyone in the butt later. Nobody in that workshop quite grasps that they've been building the future of elfdom with the Dark Lord reading over their shoulder. Because they finish it anyway. Racing the clock, Celebrimbor cracks the final piece. The metals can't be forced together. They have to be coaxed, gently. It works. He's set to make one object, then decides on two. And Galadriel stops him. Make three, she says. One ring will always corrupt whoever wears it. Two will turn on each other, but three hold a balance. And these have to belong to the elves only, kept out of anyone else's hands. It's the exact opposite of the single all-powerful object Sauron had been quietly steering them towards. Which, if you know how this whole saga ends, is a choice that matters far more than anyone in that room could guess. So they forged 3 rings, the first rings of power. The elves are saved, their light will hold. There's just a small, quiet catch that the method behind them, the alloy that made the impossible possible, came from Sauron himself. These pure Elven Rings have his fingerprints baked right into the metal. On the long crossing home, the dad quietly reckons with what his loyalty has cost him, his missing son most of all, and lands where the faithful always land. You commit to paying the price even when you can't know what it will be, and you trust it was worth it. Back home, the blind queen's ship finally reaches Númenor, and the dad, standing at the rail, goes ashen at whatever is waiting for them on the shore. Whatever it isn't good, and it's a problem the island will have to face on its own for a while. So the elves have their rings, Sauron loose in the world with a head start and a grudge, Meteor Man's a wizard walking east into the strange, and Isildur is out there somewhere under a presumed dead. That's Season 1 in the bag. Next we'll roll into Season 2, where we find out exactly how Sauron clawed his way back from death, why his mask game is only getting warmed up, and what happens when the Dark Lord strolls back into Eregion wearing a new identity. So, last season ended on the big gut punch. Halbrand, the charming scruffy king Galadriel fished out of the sea and vouched for to everybody, was Sauron the whole time. Season 2 opens by answering one of the things you've been screaming at your screen. Okay, but how is this guy even still walking around? Turns out, for a good long while, he wasn't. Flash all the way back to the beginning. Right after the big bad Morgoth got taken down, Sauron, his top lieutenant, gathers the orcs and gives a speech. And oh, it's a speech. He crowns himself the new Dark Lord, promises a shiny new kind of power, the sort that owns minds instead of just ending bodies, and spins the whole pitch like he's doing everyone a favor. The orcs aren't monsters anymore. They're gonna be the heroes who healed Middle-earth. Vote Sauron. The orcs do not vote Sauron. Instead, they turn on him, led by a face we know, Adar, Orc Dad himself. He and his children tear their would-be master apart and walk away free. So when Adar bragged back in Season 1 that he killed Sauron, man wasn't lying. Here's the trouble with killing Sauron, though. It doesn't take. Whatever's left of him seeps out as black, oily gunk that flat out refuses to die. Across time, it claws its way back toward a body, feeding on whatever it can catch. Piece by piece, he rebuilds into a man. A shipwrecked nobody adrift at sea. The exact nobody a certain elf would haul out of the water and crown a king. Yeah, everything about him was a costume, all the way down to the skin. Cut to the present, where Galadriel finally has to say the quiet part out loud. She sits across from Gil-galad, the High King, and admits it. Her Halbrand was Sauron. She knew he wasn't who he claimed, and she buried it. The High King's face does that thing where trust just quietly dies. He tells her flat out he'll believe her when he stops seeing a lie sitting behind her eyes. And honestly, he's not wrong to wonder. Elrond, our Boy Scout, takes it even harder, because those 3 brand new Elven Rings everybody's pinning survival on, he's now convinced they're a trap. Smart boy. Sauron had his hands on the alloy behind them. So Elrond grabs all 3 rings and bolts. Cue a manhunt across the Elven lands. Guards at every crossing, watchers on every road. Elrond wants the rings gone, destroyed, dropped somewhere so deep the world forgets they existed. And he runs to the one elder he's dead sure will back him up. Enter the boat guy. Name's Círdan, and he's basically the oldest, wisest elf still standing. He's literally so old he has a beard. The kind of ancient you go to when you need a grown-up. Elrond lays it all out. The rings might be Sauron's design, so let's drop them into a bottomless scar on the seabed Círdan happens to know about, and be done. For a second, the rings look toast, but Círdan won't hand him the easy answer. Judge the work, he says, not the flawed hands that shaped it. And don't go abandoning your friends over your own fear. Guide them instead. Then Galadriel catches up and argues the other side. And this is where Elrond stops being polite. He throws her own story right back in her face. Sauron didn't just trick her. He read her cover to cover, became the exact lost king she needed, and got her to hand over the whole kingdom and say thank you on the way out. And now Elrond says he's running the identical con on everyone else. Rough. True, but rough. The High King makes the call anyway. They're gonna risk it. They put the rings on. And hot damn, they work. The fading stops cold. The dying light of the elves comes roaring back, and the entire race gets yanked back from the lip of the grave. It's genuinely beautiful. It's also got Sauron's fingerprints baked right into the metal, but hey, let's all enjoy the miracle for a minute. Meanwhile, over in the Southlands, except it's not the Southlands anymore, it's Mordor now, and Adar runs it. New arrivals get one rule: farm it or fertilize it. Swear loyalty to Adar or don't bother standing back up. And into this walks a man claiming to be the king of the Southlands. He's got leverage and he knows it, because he tells Adar the one thing Adar least wants to hear. Sauron survived. He's back. New shape, nobody's seen it yet, and he's coming to take Adar's army right out from under him. Again. Adar's entire reason for existing was ending that monster so his children could finally be free. And now he's being told the monster's alive. So Orc Dad's got exactly one mission now. Find the monster before the monster finds his army. Everything else can wait. Which takes us east to Rhûn. Our meteor man, the giant amnesiac wizard, is still trudging the desert with Nori. And now Poppy, who caught up because of course she did. And now Poppy, who caught up because of course she did. It makes the tearful goodbye with Poppy in Season 1 kind of pointless, but whatever. Meteor Man is a walking natural disaster with no off switch. Tries to conjure food, nearly flattens everything nearby, and spends most of his screen time getting told he needs a name while rejecting every one the Harfoots pitch. He's not Gandalf. Not yet. They only find their way because an old Harfoot walking song turns out to be a set of directions in disguise. It drops them into Rhûn, where they immediately pick up a tale. Not Adar, some other dark power out east, a sorcerer with his own little cult, who wants this wizard badly and has already sent trackers to run him down. The show keeps his face and name in the shadows for now, so we will too. He's out there. He's close. Now deep under the mountain, Khazad-dûm. Rough time to be a dwarf. Remember that volcano that birthed Mordor? When it blew, the aftershock rolled underground for basically a whole continent and caved in the shafts that fed sunlight to the crops. So the dwarves are starving. Worse, the stone singers, who've read this rock for 9 straight centuries, suddenly can't hear a thing. The bond just went dark. Dark omens everywhere. And King Durin III keeps ordering deeper, more dangerous digs to claw his people back from the brink. With no safe path left to cut, and a darkness none of them can name closing in from somewhere far below. His son, our salty Prince Durin, is living the fallout. Disowned, broke, kids skipping meals, choking down last year's bread. His wife Disa, still the voice of reason, keeps nudging him to make peace with the old man. Both of them too stubborn to blink first. Disa even corners the king herself and calls him out flat. No wonder the mountain won't answer you, she says. Its king's gone deaf to his own son. It's a good marriage and a sad standoff, and it stays sad. And now the big one, Eregion. There's a knock at Celebrimbor's door. Our ringsmith, the guy who forged these 3 rings and still has zero clue his old crafting buddy was the devil in disguise. And who's on the doorstep? Halbrand! Who could have seen this coming? Celebrimbor nearly sends him packing because he promised Galadriel he'd never deal with the man again. Good instinct. So Sauron just, waits. Patient, wounded, painfully polite. Parks at the gate looking pitiful until Celebrimbor's own decency wins out and lets him in. He never pushes. He just makes sure you open the door yourself. Then comes the reveal. And it's a masterclass, gosh darn it. And it's the reveal that people who understand the lore of this wanted in Season 1. He tells Celebrimbor he was never Halbrand at all. He was never a king or a Southlander. And he isn't even a mortal being. He's an envoy, he says. A messenger sent by the Valar to guide the wise and save all of Middle-earth. He gives the ringsmith a glimpse of some radiant true form, and Celebrimbor actually drops to a knee, floored, dead certain he's standing in front of an angel. We know better. It's Sauron. Same devil, brand new shiny suit. He hands over a name too, Anatar, which means Lord of Gifts. Which sure, we are calling you Mr. Gifts. And Mr. Gifts did not stroll all the way here to raise a glass to the 3 Elven Rings. He came to sell Celebrimbor on cranking out a whole lot more. 7 for the dwarves, a batch for men, and he dangles the sweetest bait of all in front of an artist. Do this, he says, and the world will finally know your name. They'll call you the Lord of the Rings. The trap for the ringsmith is officially set. And back in Lindon, Galadriel is the only one connecting the dots. Everyone assumes Sauron holed up in Mordor. She knows better. Sauron doesn't want a wasteland. He wants the whole thing, and to get it he needs more rings, which means he needs Celebrimbor. Which means he's already in Eregion. The rings are even handing out visions now, black storm clouds swallowing white towers. So the High King finally sends a party to protect Celebrimbor, and Galadriel fully expects to lead it. Instead, in one last twist of the knife, he hands command to Elrond and tells her she's the one taking orders. That's how much her judgment is worth right now. And to be fair, she did screw up immensely. Then the final beat, quiet and awful. An invitation goes out from Celebrimbor to the dwarves. Come to Eregion. The spider just mailed out his dinner invites. The elves think they've been saved. The ringsmith thinks he's been blessed. And the only 2 people alive who might stop it are being marched straight into the web, where the smiling monster is already waiting. Durin and Disa show up at the forge in Eregion, and Mr. Gifts is waiting with the pitch. Anatar wants to make rings for the dwarves, 7 of them. 1 for each of the great dwarf lords. Each one supposedly packed with the power to heal a dying mountain. Same way the Elven Rings just healed the elves' great tree. All the dwarves have to do is keep the Mithril flowing. That's the whole deal. Durin, our salty prince, is not sold. Magic jewelry from a stranger who reeks of too good to be true? Come on. But it's Anatar's cover story that trips the wire. He gushes about how his dear friend Elrond talks him up all the time. And Durin actually knows Elrond. Elrond would rather eat rocks than say something nice about him. So Durin clocks it. Whoever this Anatar is, he's never met Elrond in his life. He's lying. Durin doesn't know he's talking to the devil. He just knows he's talking to a liar. Meanwhile, Celebrimbor is busy digging his own grave. Gil-galad flat out banned any more rings and doesn't even know Anatar exists. So what does the ringsmith do? He writes the High King a cheerful little note saying the 3 worked great. He's shutting the forge down. He'll be along to Lindon soon. All lies. He just wants the room to keep building. This is the one moment his whole life was pointed at, he tells himself. Nobody's taking it from him. Yeah, that's exactly how the spider likes you thinking. Down in Khazad-dûm, things are grim. The kingdom's still starving, grain down to 3 months. Kids going to bed hungry. And Durin's got the one job nobody wants. Go tell the father who disowned him about the offer. So he does. He walks in and instead of arguing, tells the old king the plain truth. That he's his son. That he's got the same hard head and the same stiff pride. That he was a fool to disrespect him, and he's sorry. And King Durin III, who's been a stone wall this whole time, softens. They make up, but Durin doesn't leave it there. He hands over Celebrimbor's ring offer and then, in the same breath, warns his own father off it. You always told me messing with fate to cheat death leads somewhere terrible, he says. So what if that was true? So now the Golden Temptation is sitting right there on the king's table. We'll see how that goes. Way out on the island, Númenor is falling apart, and not from any monster. The old king is dead. Queen Mithril, still blind from the eruption, is barely holding the throne, and her cousin Pharazôn is circling like a man who's waited his whole life for this. Which he has. Miriel's coronation is supposed to lock in her rule. It does the opposite. The crowd turns ugly, and someone drops the bomb. The queen has been secretly taking counsel from the Palantir, the old elvish made seeing stone. That's the last straw. Elf magic. A blind queen taking orders from a glowing rock. They howl for it to be destroyed. And right on cue, an eagle sweeps in overhead. The exact holy omen Mithril was praying would bless her reign. Except in the chaos, the crowd reads it the other way. To them, the eagle is blessing Pharazôn, not her. Which, I need to be clear here. It does not make sense that they make this interpretation. The eagle showed up to Miriel's coronation. That's the omen. There is no way that it makes sense that the eagle is blessing Pharazôn. But whatever. And just like that, the island's heart swings to him. Now for the twist Season 1 kept in its back pocket. Isildur. Everybody thinks he's burned to death in the eruption. He didn't. He's alive, wandering the ruined Southlands with his horse. But of course he's not dead. This is a prequel, and if Isildur died, that wouldn't make any sense. He runs into a woman named Estrid, and it's a heck of a first meeting. She stabs him in the thigh, convinced he's an orc. Once they untangle that, they team up and head to Pelargir, the settlement where the survivors regrouped. And a reunion's waiting. Erendir, the elf, is there. So is Theo. But Bronwyn, Theo's mother, the healer who held the whole community together, is gone. An orc arrow got her. Fun fact, this only happened because Bronwyn's actress decided not to be in the show anymore. So she survived all of the crazy, horrible wounds from Season 1 just to be dead in Season 2. Theo's swallowing a mountain of grief, and it's about to make him do something reckless. The other shoe drops on Estrid. Erendir spots a burn on her neck and calls it a self-burn, the trick the Wildmen used to scar away Adar's brand and pass as ordinary folk. Estrid served the enemy. She stabbed Isildur, realized he was a useful Númenorian, and played nice. And before Isildur can even decide how betrayed to feel, her actual betrothed, a man named Hagen, walks out of the wood very much alive, and she goes to him. So, that's that. The woods have their own residents, too. Erendir stumbles onto a pair of Ents, the giant walking tree shepherds, and they are livid because Adar's orc army stomped through their forest, snapping and burning everything it touched. Erendir apologizes on behalf of every axe ever swung, and the Ents grant an uneasy peace. More useful than that, though, is what the orc army left behind. A trail. And the trail points dead at Eregion. Somebody needs to warn the High King, and fast. Out east in Rune, our meteor man finally meets the strangest fella in the entire show. A cheerful, singing, impossibly old wanderer who lives in the wild and goes by Tom Bombadil. Call him the singing weirdo. Tom's older than the rivers and the trees, and he'll tell you he was around for the first drop of rain. And he takes the wizard on as a student. The lessons are cryptic because everything about Tom is cryptic. The wizard wants Tom to hand him a staff and teach him power. Tom basically says your staff works like your name. You already own it, the moment you've earned it. And buddy, today you did not. But Tom drops the real news too. There's another wizard out here. The Dark Wizard. An old evil that already rules most of Rune and wants more. And if that darkness ever joins hands with Sauron, the whole world burns to ash. The wizard's job, Tom says, is to face both of them. No pressure. While that's going on, Nori and Poppy get scooped up by the Stoors, a hidden little folk who live in holes in the sand and are absolutely not Harfoots, thank you very much. There's a great runaround with their prickly leader and a set of rules nobody can count. But buried in the Stoors' history is a gut punch. Ages ago, one of their own dreamed of a promised homeland and led a caravan off to find it, and was never heard from again. It's the same wandering song the Harfoots still sing. Turns out, these two little peoples are family, who could have guessed? Both still chasing a home neither of them ever reached. And the whole time, the Dark Wizard's masked hunters are combing the desert for Nori and Poppy. Closing in. Back to the main event, Elrond and Galadriel are marching a company to Eregion to save Celebrimbor, with Elrond in charge and Galadriel stuck under him, and the two of them barely speaking. The problem is, the ring on her finger, it's feeding her visions, guiding her, and she's starting to treat that guidance as gospel, ready to trade anything to beat Sauron, even Elrond's life. Elrond doesn't trust the thing an inch, and flatly bans the company from taking orders off a piece of jewelry. So when the road ahead gets blown apart and they have to detour, Elrond makes the call. Ignore Galadriel's warning. Take the fast shortcut south through a cursed stretch called the Barrow Downs. You don't need magical jewelry to know going through a cursed stretch of land called the Barrow Downs is a bad idea. The place is a graveyard for ancient kings and something has woken the dead. Barrow wights. Undead things that shrug off normal blades come crawling up out of the tombs, and the company only survive by grabbing the swords the corpses were buried with. Worse, in the dirt they find dead messengers from Lindon. The warning that was supposed to reach Celebrimbor never made it. Somebody made very sure of it. And then the real ambush lands. Adar's orcs, a whole legion of them marching onto Elvish land, fall on the company. Galadriel knows they can't all get out, and she knows the one thing that absolutely cannot fall into Sauron's hands is her ring. She then presses it into Elrond's palm, tells the others to run for Lindon, and stays behind to buy them time. The orcs take her. Her people think she died to save them. Elrond knows better. She did it to keep the ring away from Sauron. Galadriel's in chains. The warning never came, and a legion of orcs is closing on the ringsmith who thinks he's finally about to make history. So now, Galadriel was in orc chains, the warning to Eregion had been quietly murdered on the road, and Adar's army was marching. Now the trap tightens for real, and holy crap, does Sauron have his hands on every single string. Start in Eregion, where Mr. Gifts makes his move. He wants Celebrimbor to forge one more batch of rings, this time for men, 9 of them, one for each of the 9 biggest kingdoms of men. And Celebrimbor, to his credit, says no. Men are too easily corrupted, which is so fun coming from him. The risk's too big. So Annatar just smiles and says, fine, I'll make the 9 myself. And from there, the ringsmith comes apart. Here's the con. Those dwarven rings are already going bad, twisting the dwarves who wear them. And Annatar convinces Celebrimbor it's his fault. Remember that lie he told the High King to cheer all his calm, forge his closed letter? Annatar frames that one little dishonesty as the poison that rotted the 7. So now Celebrimbor is drowning in guilt. Certain the only way to fix his mess is to push on and forge the 9 and somehow redeem everything, which is precisely where Sauron wanted him. Meanwhile, one of the young smiths, Merdania, gets a glimpse behind the curtain. During a forging, she slips into the unseen world and sees a towering thing made of fire that stank of death, with cold, endless eyes. And in her gut, she knows that thing has been walking among them the whole time. She is this close to the truth, and Annatar swoops in and reroutes her. Oh, that monster you saw? That's poor Celebrimbor. All this ring-making has diminished him, left him open to the shadow. Tell no one, especially not him. So the one person who caught a look at Sauron's real face walks away convinced she saw Celebrimbor's. By now, Annatar is basically running the city. Celebrimbor hands him every last administrative duty, locks himself in the forge, and starts forgetting things. People's names, where he set his own hammer. And Annatar seals him off from everyone, keeps the smiths out, and when a dead soldier washes up to the gate with a threat carved into him and the trade road suddenly goes silent, Annatar buries the bodies and tells nobody. Eregion is being surrounded, and its own leader has no clue, because the snake in his tower is keeping him blind. Down in Khazad-dûm, the ring already got its dwarf. King Durin III took the one Celebrimbor sent, the exact one his son begged him not to touch, and now it owns him. He's greedy in a way he has never been. He slaps a tribute tax on his own people, hoards Mithril, cuts off the supply to Eregion, and demands a cut of every other realm's mines before he'll hand over the rest of the 7. Worst of all, he's driving his miners deeper and deeper straight toward the exact nameless thing in the dark that everyone is begging him to leave alone. Remember, it's the Balrog. His son sees it. Take off the ring, he tells him, and the king just says no. The ring is his and his alone, to which his son says the quiet, awful thing back. No, the ring owns you. Durin and Disa actually planned to stop the old man by force, to lay their bodies in front of the mine and dare the king to turn the army on his own son. But when the moment comes, Durin can't do it. He looks at his father and still sees him in there somewhere, lost and far away but not gone. So he freezes, and the digging keeps going. Way out on Númenor, the faithful are getting crushed. Pharazôn has the crown now, and anyone still loyal to Mithril is being stripped of rank and worse. His men tear down the oldest shrine on the island, and when the faithful soldier Valandil stands in their way, they cut him down for it. Then they come for Elendil. Isildur's father gets dragged into court, charged with treason and offered his life if he'll just kneel and call Pharazôn king. He won't. He looks the usurper dead in the eye and names Mithril the one true ruler. So they sentence him to trial by abyss, thrown into the sea to be judged by a monster. And at the last second, Mithril steps in and takes his place, because the crime was done in her name. They throw her to the sea worm instead, and the sea gives her back, alive, untouched. The Valar themselves have just declared her innocent, and the same crowd that turned on her is chanting her name again, Queen of the Sea. Out east, our meteor man is still with Tom, the singing weirdo, learning about the deep magic Tom calls the secret fire. Tom keeps circling the same lesson, that a wizard's staff and the power that comes with it have to be earned, never grabbed. But then the wizard gets a vision. His friend Nori is going to die, and soon, unless he goes to her. And Tom lays out the cruelest fork in the road there is. Go save your friend, and you turn your back on your destiny forever. Save the world, and you might lose her. Friend or destiny, pick one. And speaking of Nori, she and Poppy are still holed up with the Stewards, while the dark wizard's masked hunters comb the desert for them. Nori nearly turns herself in to spare everyone, until the little folk talk her down, because handing herself over hands the enemy a road straight to the wizard, and that could doom the whole world. So instead of running, they decide to dig in and fight. Now for the big one. Galadriel, still Adar's prisoner, gets his pitch. And it's a heck of a pitch. Adar hates Sauron even more than she does. He's got Morgoth's old crown, the very thing he once used to kill Sauron the first time around. And he figures that crown plus her Elven Rings could put the monster down for good. All she has to do is swallow her pride and team up with an orc. Except Adar is playing her. The whole let's be allies routine is bait. And Galadriel, trying to sound like she's the one in control, hands him everything he came for. She confirms Sauron is hiding in Eregion. She confirms he won't run until the rings are finished. And she lets slip that Elrond is on their way with an elven army and one of the rings. That is all Adar needed. He never planned to hit Eregion with one legion. He brought a flood. And now he knows exactly who's inside and exactly what's coming. Then comes the part that curdles her blood. Galadriel finally sees the whole board. Sauron didn't have an army, so he baited Adar into bringing his instead. Sauron wants this siege. The thing in the tower engineered his own attackers. She screams it in Adar's face, that this is precisely what Sauron wants. But Adar is too proud and too hungry for revenge to hear it. He binds her tighter and marches. And the bells of Eregion begin to ring. The gates slam, the drawbridge lifts, and up in his tower, Celebrimbor finally hears the wrongness and moves to walk out, only for Annatar to block the door one more time and offer him the sweetest poison yet. Finish the 9, he purrs, and history will forget the Silmarils and remember your rings as the most precious thing ever made. Outdo the great Fëanor, just this once. Outside the walls, Adar raises his hand, calls the orcs his children, and gives the order to fire. Eregion is surrounded. The ringsmith is still forging for the monster who owns him, and the one person alive who sees the whole trap is watching it snap shut from inside a cave. Eregion is surrounded. Adar's army is at the walls. Galadriel in chains, and up in the tower the greatest smith who ever lived is still hammering away for the monster wearing a friend's face. Here's where all this comes due. Start with Celebrimbor, because his part is the saddest in all this. He's noticed something's off. He keeps misplacing tools, forgetting names, and then he starts actually looking, and what he finds is worse than madness. There's a mouse that scurries past on a loop, sounds that repeat on the same intervals, over and over. And the candles in his workshop, which have been burning all day, haven't burned down so much as a fingernail. Time isn't moving. He's not in Eregion. He's in a box built inside his own head, and Mr. Gifts put him there. So he turns on his house guest and asks the question 2 full seasons in the making. What exactly did you do to me? No messenger of the Valar pulls a stunt like this. And Annatar stops pretending to be nice. He demands the 9 right now. And when Celebrimbor looks down at the Mithril he's been working with, he sees what's been mixed into it. Because Sauron cut his own hand and bled into the alloy, blood black as tar. Celebrimbor finally says it out loud. You're him, aren't you? And Sauron just tells him he goes by a lot of names. There it is. The mask is off. And here's the cruelest part. Celebrimbor breaks out of the illusion, runs down into the city, and tries to warn everyone. He's screaming that Annatar is Sauron, that they've all been deceived, telling them to cut the man open and look at the black blood. And nobody believes him. Not one of them. To the smiths, he's just the burned-out old lord who's been locked in a tower talking to himself while their kind, helpful Annatar held the city together. Even Mordanya, who saw the fire thing with her own eyes, sides against him. So they walk him back upstairs to where he belongs, they tell him. The one man in Eregion who knows the truth gets treated like a lunatic and put back in his cage by the people he was trying to save. Then Sauron makes his offer. Finish the 9 and I'll spare your city. And when Celebrimbor asks what he plans to do with them, he says he's going to build a flawless peace that lasts forever. Which, coming from him, is about the scariest sentence available. Outside, the siege gets clever. Adar dams the river so his army can walk straight across the riverbed at the walls. Then Elrond shows up with the elven host, and the two commanders meet in the middle for a chat. Adar's offer is simple: hand over the ring you're carrying and get Galadriel back alive. Elrond turns it down, and when he does, Adar promises to bring her head to the battlefield on a spike. Elrond asks to say goodbye. They check him for weapons, wave him through, and he holds her and apologizes. She tells him one thing: win. Because Elrond's got a card. Prince Durin is raising a dwarf army, and at first light they'll smash into Adar's flank. Which brings us to Khazad-dûm. Elrond goes to Durin himself and asks for his axe. And Durin delivers a barn burner of a speech, calls Sauron the Stoneheart out by name, tells his people the monster thinks he can buy them with greed and turn their hearts to ash, and that dwarf loyalty is stronger than any sorcery. The army assembles at the gate. It's glorious. And then word comes up from below. The king has turned his axe on his own people to keep digging. He's about to break through to the Balrog sleeping under the mountain. Disa's message is one line: bring the army home. So Durin has to choose his friend's city or his own mountain. He chooses the mountain. The gates of Khazad-dûm swing shut. And out on the field, Elrond stands there watching the north for an army that isn't coming, telling everyone he'll listen that Durin will come. He says it while the orcs charge, says it again while his people fall. Even the High King rides out to die beside them, because a king belongs where he's needed most. Nobody comes. Meanwhile, Sauron gets to work on Celebrimbor, and this part I'll keep brief because it's genuinely rough. He tortures a man into finishing his jewelry, and while he's doing it, he explains that none of it is his fault. Celebrimbor made him do this by being stubborn. So really, the ringsmith is torturing himself. Galadriel, though, gets loose. She cuts her way out of the orc camp, slips into the city through a hidden way, and finds Celebrimbor strung up and half-broken. She orders him cut down, tells the soldiers this ruined man is the actual Lord of Eregion, and for the first time in weeks, somebody treats him like he's real. He gives her the 9 rings, sends her out through an old dwarven tunnel with orders to save whoever she can. And he stays, because he built this city, and he's not leaving it. The last thing he tells her is that it was never strength that beats the dark. It's light. Now the finale. Buckle up because everybody pays. Under the mountain, the ring has eaten King Durin III completely. His son comes down into the mine and gives him one last chance. Threatens to take the whole hand off if he won't take the ring off. And the old king won't even hear it. He tells his son that begging isn't something dwarves do. Then the digging finishes the job, and the thing under Khazad-dûm wakes up. Fire and shadow older than the kingdom and absolutely enormous. And in that last moment, watching it come, the old man finally comes back. He gets the ring off and tells his son the truth about those arm wrestling matches when the boy was small. How he never once let him win. The kid was just getting stronger all on his own. He asks his son to forgive him, and then he throws himself at the beast and takes the mountain down on top of them both. The monster isn't dead, it's buried, and it will be waiting down there for a very long time. Over in Eregion, Sauron wants one thing from Celebrimbor. Where are the rings hidden? And Celebrimbor, who has nothing left, refuses him. Instead, he uses his last breath to curse him. He tells him the rings of power will be the end of him, and that one day a single enemy will bring him to ruin. Sauron says he's their creator, their master, and Celebrimbor corrects him. You're not their master, you're their prisoner. And then he hands him the title this entire show is named after, the Lord of the Rings. And then he dies, and the greatest craftsman of the age goes out having lost everything except the one thing that mattered. Outside, Galadriel makes a deal with Adar. She puts a ring on him and it heals him, peels away the centuries of ruin. And for a moment, there's an elf standing where the orc father was. She forgives him. He swears to march his children home to Mordor and never make war again. It lasts about a minute, because his children have already gone over to Sauron. They come to him with a story about being loyal, get close and kill him. He calls them his children one last time, and one of them looks down and tells him they aren't that anymore. Then they turn around and hail Sauron as the new Dark Lord. And there it is, the exact thing Sauron wanted back in the very first scene of the season, an orc army that would kneel to him. He didn't take it by force, he just waited and let a good father die for it. First order of business, burn Eregion, kill every elf, bring him the leaders alive. Then he corners Galadriel. He takes the 9 off her, he offers her the whole world, tells her he'd have crowned her queen of it, says the door between them is still open. She tells him it's shut, and rather than let him have her ring too, she goes over the edge. The dwarves finally arrive, too late for the city, but in time to cover the retreat, and Galadriel gets carried out barely alive with her spirit half pulled into the shadow. Elrond leads the survivors north, into a hidden valley. a sanctuary shielded by the 3 Elven Rings. If that sounds like the start of somewhere famous, hang on to that. Out east, our meteor man finally meets the Dark Wizard, and the guy knows him, says they're kin, that 5 of them were sent, and that this one talked him into leaving Paradise for Middle-earth in the first place. He offers everything the wizard has been chasing, his path, his staff, his name. The catch is he wants them to beat Sauron and then split the world between them, be his successor, and our guy says he'd rather wander the desert nameless forever, so the Dark Wizard tears through the Store village to teach him what losing feels like. Nori and Poppy make it, and afterward, when the little folk are packing up to migrate, the Store kids keep thanking the tall, pointy fellow, except they can't say elf properly, and it comes out as Grand Elf, Gandalf. And the staff, the one Tom said could never be taken, only earned, is just standing there waiting for him, because a wizard never goes out and finds a staff. The staff picks him, same way it works with a name. That's it. That's the guy. It's Gandalf. Over on Númenor, the politician finishes his takeover by declaring every one of the faithful a traitor. Soldiers start dragging people out of their homes, Elendil goes into hiding, and the queen sends him west to gather what's left of the faithful, but not before she puts a sword in his hand. A blade with a name, Narsil. Yes, that Narsil. That blade is going to do something rather important to a certain finger, and down at Pelargir, Pharazôn's son turns the refugee settlement into a military fort, squeezes the survivors for timber, and refuses Isildur's passage home on the grounds that his father is now a wanted man. Theo steps up to speak for the settlement. Isildur asks Estrid to come away with him. Little seed planted for later. We close on the elves in their hidden valley, arguing about what comes next. Sauron's army are loose across the whole region now, and the High King wants to know whether to attack or dig in, sword or shield. And Galadriel, wrecked, having lost basically everyone, gives them Celebrimbor's answer. Not strength, light. And the sun's still up there. Roll credits. So that's where we stand. Sauron ends this thing with an orc army chanting his name, the 9 rings that are going to make some very memorable ghost monsters, and no more disguise to hide behind. The elves are scattered, but they've got the 3 and a valley he can't touch. The dwarves have a new king, a Balrog sealed under their floor. Númenor is one bad decision away from the mistake everybody knows is coming, and a wandering nobody in the eastern desert just got his name. Thanks for hanging out through all of it. If you made it this far, you're the reason I do these things. And I appreciate you. Go get some water, stretch your legs, and if you would, like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.